Lake Tahoe, the jewel of the Sierra Nevada, a place so stunning that Mark Twain once called it the fairest picture the whole earth affords. For generations, people have traveled from all over the world to witness something that seems almost impossible. Water so clear you could see a white dinner plate 100 feet below the surface. 100 feet. Let that sink in for a second. That is like looking down from a 10-story building and still seeing the ground in perfect detail. But today, that legendary clarity is fading. The lake that once defined crystal clear is losing its shine. So what happened? What forces turned one of the clearest lakes on Earth into something that is still beautiful? Sure, but not quite the same. This is the story of Lake Tahoe's water, how it got so clear in the first place, and why it is disappearing right before our eyes. Let's start with why Lake Tahoe was so ridiculously clear to begin with. This was not just luck or good marketing. The geology and geography of this place created the perfect conditions for some of the most transparent water on the planet. Lake Tahoe sits at 6,225 feet above sea level, straddling the border of California and Nevada. It is the second deepest lake in the United States at 1,645 feet deep, and it holds enough water to cover the entire state of California in 14 inches of water. That is absolutely massive. But size and depth alone do not make water clear. What made Tahoe special was the fact that it is an oligotrophic lake, which is just a fancy way of saying it is naturally low in nutrients. Low nutrients mean less algae, less plant growth, and less stuff floating around blocking your view. The water was so pure that scientists used to measure clarity by lowering a white disc called a Secchi disc into the lake and seeing how deep they could still spot it. Back in the 1960s, you could see that disc over 100 feet down. 100 feet of pure, gin-clear water. It was like looking through air. The surrounding granite mountains helped too. Granite does not erode easily, so less sediment and dirt washed into the lake compared to other mountain lakes. Add in the fact that Tahoe has no major polluting industries on its shores, and you have a recipe for water clarity that became world famous. People did not just come to Tahoe to ski or hike. They came to see the water. That impossible, unbelievable blue water. But even paradise has its problems. And for Lake Tahoe, the problems started piling up fast. Let us talk about the biggest culprit: people, development, and population growth. Back in the mid-20th century, Tahoe was still a relatively quiet mountain retreat. Sure, there were some resorts and cabins, but nothing compared to what was coming. After World War II, the American love affair with the automobile took off, and suddenly, places like Tahoe were just a weekend road trip away from big cities like San Francisco and Sacramento. And when the 1960 Winter Olympics came to nearby Squaw Valley, now called Palisades, Tahoe, the floodgates opened. Suddenly, everybody wanted a piece of Tahoe. Ski resorts popped up. Hotels were built. Vacation homes sprouted like weeds along the shoreline. And with all that development came roads, parking lots, driveways, rooftops, and a whole lot of impervious surfaces that do not absorb water. When it rains or when the snow melts, all that runoff has to go somewhere. Where does it go? Straight into the lake, carrying dirt, sediment, oil, chemicals, fertilizers, and nutrients. It brings many nutrients. Runoff altered the lake's balance. Remember when I said Tahoe was oligotrophic, low in nutrients? Well, not anymore. All that runoff started feeding the lake things it was never meant to digest. Nitrogen and phosphorus from fertilizers pet waste, and failing septic systems began pouring in. What do nitrogen and phosphorus do? They feed algae. Algae blooms started appearing in the lake, something that would have been unthinkable decades earlier. Algae blocks light. It clouds the water. It makes it harder to see that white disk 100 feet down. By the 1990s, clarity had already dropped to around 70 feet. That is still pretty clear by most standards, but for Tahoe, it was a disaster. The lake was losing about 2 feet of clarity every single year. 2 feet a year. Do the math, and it does not take long before that 100 feet becomes 50, then 30, then worse. Clarity kept falling. But it is not just nutrients. Climate change has entered the chat, and it is making everything worse. Tahoe used to get reliable, heavy snowfall every winter. That snow would pile up in the mountains, then slowly melt in the spring and summer, feeding the lake with cold, clean water. As temperatures have risen, the snowpack has shrunk. Some winters now bring more rain than snow, and rain is a problem. Rain hits the ground harder and faster than melting snow. It picks up more sediment, more dirt, more pollution, and it dumps it all into the lake in big, dirty surges. Less snow also means the lake warms up faster in the summer. Warmer water holds less oxygen and creates better conditions for algae to thrive. It is a vicious cycle. Warmer temperatures, less snow, more algae, less clarity. And then there are the wildfires. Over the past decade, massive wildfires have scorched the forests around Lake Tahoe. The Caldor Fire in 2021 came dangerously close to torching South Lake Tahoe entirely. Fires do not just burn trees. They incinerate vegetation that used to hold the soil in place. After a fire, the landscape is left bare and vulnerable. When the rains come, all that loose ash and sediment washes straight downhill into the lake. It is like dumping a truckload of dirt into your swimming pool. Scientists have found that a single large fire can set back water clarity improvements by years, even decades. Let's put some numbers to the heartbreak. In 1968, Lake Tahoe's average annual clarity was 102 feet. By 1997, it had dropped to 64 feet. By 2010, it was hovering around 68 feet, showing some signs of improvement thanks to restoration efforts. But then things got worse again. In 2021, clarity dropped to just 61 feet. And in 2022, it hit a new low, 59 feet. That's nearly half of what it was in the 1960s. Half. Gone. For a lake that built its entire identity on being impossibly clear, that's a gut punch. And it's not just an aesthetic loss. Tahoe's clarity is tied to its entire ecosystem. The lake's famous cobalt blue color comes from the way light scatters in ultra-pure water. As the water gets murkier, that color fades. The underwater plants that rely on sunlight to survive are getting choked out. Native fish species are struggling. The very thing that made Tahoe special, that made it worth protecting in the first place, is slipping away. So, what's being done about it? Actually, quite a lot. Scientists, environmentalists, and government agencies have been fighting like hell to save Lake Tahoe's clarity for decades. The Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, TRPA, was created back in 1969 specifically to manage development and protect the lake. It is one of the only bi-state agencies in the country with real regulatory teeth. They have implemented strict building codes, limits on tree removal, and requirements for stormwater treatment. If you want to build anything in the Tahoe Basin, you are going to jump through a lot of hoops, and that is by design. One of the biggest initiatives has been improving stormwater infrastructure. Cities and counties around the lake have spent hundreds of millions of dollars installing filters, detention basins, and permeable pavement to capture runoff before it reaches the water. There are now over 7,000 stormwater treatment devices scattered around the basin, and they are working. Studies show they are preventing thousands of pounds of sediment and nutrients from entering the lake every single year. Stormwater treatment matters. Erosion control has been another huge focus. Crews have been restoring stream channels, replanting native vegetation, and stabilizing hillsides to reduce the amount of dirt washing into Tahoe. Even something as simple as keeping people on marked trails makes a difference. Every footstep off the path loosens soil that can eventually end up in the lake. Erosion control helps. And then there is the fight against invasive species. Lake Tahoe has an invasive species problem too. Non-native plants like Eurasian watermilfoil and curly-leaf pondweed have taken over parts of the lake, and they contribute to the murkiness. Divers have been going underwater to manually pull these plants out by the roots. It is slow, expensive, and exhausting work, but it is necessary. Invasive species removal is tedious work. Climate change is the wild card, though. You can control development, you can filter stormwater, you can pull weeds, but you cannot control the weather, at least not easily. Scientists are now exploring more radical solutions. Some have proposed using giant underwater curtains to keep warmer water from mixing with colder, deeper water, which could slow algae growth. Others are looking at whether adding tiny amounts of certain minerals could help lock up excess nutrients. These ideas sound like science fiction, but they are being seriously considered because the stakes are that high. Climate change complicates everything. There's been some good news recently. In 2023, Lake Tahoe's clarity improved slightly to 61 feet, up from the record low of 59 feet in 2022. It is not much, but it is something. It shows that the restoration efforts are working, at least a little bit. But scientists are quick to point out that this is a long game. Restoring Tahoe's clarity to what it was in the 1960s might not even be possible anymore. The lake has fundamentally changed. The goal now is to stabilize it, to stop the decline, and maybe, just maybe, claw back a few feet of clarity over the coming decades. And here is the thing. Lake Tahoe is not unique. What is happening here is happening to lakes all over the world. Nutrient pollution, climate change, invasive species. It is a global problem. But Tahoe has become a symbol, a test case for whether we can actually reverse environmental damage once it has been done. If we can save Tahoe, maybe we can save other places too. Global lessons are at stake. I have been to Lake Tahoe a handful of times, and even with the reduced clarity, it is still one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen. Standing on the shore, looking out at that impossible blue, you can almost convince yourself that nothing is wrong. But then you talk to the old-timers, the people who have been coming here for 50 or 60 years, and they will tell you it is not the same. The water used to be clearer. You used to be able to see deeper, and that is what haunts this place. Not that it is ugly now, because it is not. But it used to be even more beautiful, and we let it slip away. So, what happened to Lake Tahoe's crystal clear water? In a word, everything. Development, population growth, nutrient pollution, climate change, wildfires, invasive species. It is not one villain. It is a whole army of them, each chipping away at the lake's clarity bit by bit, year by year. But unlike a lot of environmental stories, this one is not over yet. People are fighting back. Millions of dollars, thousands of work hours, and countless volunteers are all working toward the same goal, bringing Tahoe back. It might never be what it was in 1968, but maybe that is okay. Maybe the new goal is to meet the lake where it is now and protect what is left. Because even at 61 feet of clarity, Lake Tahoe is still one of the clearest, most beautiful lakes on Earth, and that is worth fighting for. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please go ahead and subscribe. I make new videos all the time covering environmental stories, hidden natural wonders, and places that are worth protecting. If you have been to Lake Tahoe, or if you have thoughts on how we can protect our lakes and rivers, drop them in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in the next one.